All right, I will then call the meeting to order. I don't think we have any brand new people here who haven't joined us before, but I guess I'll just take a minute in case anybody wants to introduce themselves or. Hearing none, I'll move on to our next agenda item of the approval of the youth committee minutes from February of 2023. Is there any discussion of those minutes? Any opposition to approving the minutes? Then I deem them unanimously passed. Thank you so much. The chair's report, really straightforward this week, and we touched about it a little bit, but to officially put it in the minutes, for those of you who weren't in the full board meeting or may have missed it, both the Comeback Kid Award application and the New York Yankees Kid Award applications are live. You should have gotten an email about that last week. In addition, I wanted to take a moment to remind folks, and I think most people know, that SYEP applications are live until the end of the month. And I also got an email that I'm going to ask to be circulated regarding the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance has 24 openings for interns this summer. So I will send that out so folks can apply if interested, but it looks like we've got a really good group of potential summer activities for youth to participate. I encourage everyone to take as full advantage as you can. If you encounter any difficulties, please don't hesitate to let the office know, and I will do whatever I can to try to alleviate those difficulties. The only other item I had for my chairperson report, I do have a piece of new business that I'll hold for then, is just if you missed it, the approval of virtual meetings has been extended through April 21st. So we will continue to meet via Zoom up until at least then. Any questions on that?
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item I have on the agenda are the budget items. So I know last month we talked about kind of just some ideas. I've gotten some language together that is really just kind of boilerplate, no frills. You know, the youth committee asks DYCD to commit to whichever our request is. The only one, and as a reminder, it was to sustain and or expand SYEP, because we are talking about, David, stop me if I'm lying, fiscal year 2024, 2025. So not July 23, July 24, because this year's budget priorities, they've already done the budget for the fiscal year starting in July.
I would never accuse you of lying, but you are accurate.
Okay, thank you. If I'm confused, then I appreciate your word choice there. The only budget request that I wanted to, in further reflection from our last meeting, I wanted to bring back was, we had talked about asking for something along the lines of committing to a more even spread of programs across the community board. And it occurred to me that I don't know that we have anything concrete that says there isn't. I know that DYCD probably has a list of all their contracts and you know who they are with, but I think we might want to make that request more specific, and that might take a little bit more time in terms of getting an idea of where these programmatic deserts are, and then asking specifically that DYCD commits to funding programs in XYZ area rather than a more broad expansion or, you know, evaluating the evenness of program funding. Yes, David.
Have you seen the map that Margaret Della put together about the distribution among the across the district? It's quite good. It might be useful for you.
I have seen it.
Okay.
I thought it was a little more nuanced than what we were looking for, but I'll
Okay.
circle back with Margaret as well. I thought it was more like, I don't know that it was youth focused in terms of
No,
like.
it's definitely not youth focused, but I thought it might be helpful nonetheless. But I think that's a great idea to try to figure out how well distributed it is. Because I mean, I would think, yeah, there's, summer youth in Van Cortlandt and maybe something on Broadway, but that is probably not a good enough definition for your purposes. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and I mean, David and Sergio, you guys have been making these requests a little longer than I have. My thought was in previous discussions, a more specific request is a lot, they have to, it looks like the feedback we get from kind of very broad requests is like, we're already doing this, or, it's harder for them to commit to something if it's very large as well, that we want to be able to say we need programs in Marble Hill, rather than committing to evenness. And, then we kind of also leave it up to them to say, it's already even, we don't know what you're talking about. So that was my thought. I don't know if others also have thoughts on that.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
I think that one of the things you said, and that's what grabbed me was let's ask the agency where in the community board there are these deserts, where they provide it, and can they put it on a map for us? I don't think we necessarily have to reinvent the wheel if we get that cooperation.
So go ahead, Leona, please.
Thank you. I was looking because I remember at some point I wrote a paper about District 8, and I remember seeing a website with like a list of the facilities there. So if you go to capitalplanning.nyc.gov, there's a map of the whole city with like the sort of facilities it has, and you can filter like education, child welfare, and youth, and you can filter like between schools, camps, child services, and welfare. So that might be what you're looking for.
I think that would be tremendously helpful, especially cross-referencing that with what Margaret has. And then I think just to be thorough, I know that DYCD keeps a list, and I know that Alex has mentioned it, of everything they fund in Community Board 8. So it might be worth, because there may be some things that overlap, that they happen to help kids, but they're not strictly, or they happen to help youth, but they don't fall under DYCD. They're more of a education, library, something else. So I think, probably trying to attack all three angles to make sure we have the most concrete or comprehensive view of where these deserts may be.
Do you want me to email you the link, or did you find it?
If you could email it to me, my computer.
Could you copy me on it, Leona? Please?
Sure, yeah.
I'll put it in the minutes.
Yeah, I try to, my computer doesn't like me trying to take minutes on it quickly while we're doing this. My keyboard cuts out, so I don't want to risk going to another tab. It really should be retired right now. But yes, please send that along. That'd be great. Does anyone think that we should be including more unique or tailored language regarding the SYEP? I mean, we have a request from that we made for SYEP. I think it might have been last year, the year before, that I was planning on using a lot of the same language, but I can add more urgency or something if anyone feels particularly passionate about this. I know SYEP is something we keep on our agendas, but it also does seem like it is a DYCD priority, so I don't know how forceful we have to be about that.
Julia?
Yes, sir.
Have you spoken to the folks such as Kingsbridge Heights and Mashalu Montefiore community centers, and maybe PTAs or school principals as to what youth programs they might like? I don't know. I thought they might be a good source.
Yeah, I mean, Normally, we have a pretty good turnout. Recently, it's been a little less, but these budget requests were made by the community centers. These are their suggestions on things that
I
they thought
see.
were important to fund. So what
Excellent.
we did last
Excellent.
time is we kind of identified the areas, and then I tried to kind of fine tune them a little bit in between meetings so that hopefully next month we're approving them and they'll be ready for the budget discussion.
Excellent.
I'm trying to get better about my timetable. I know I'm usually right under the wire. I'm trying to get a little better this year. Any other questions, comments, concerns about budget request items for this year? Or next year?
This go around.
This, thank you. Okay, sorry, just making sure that wasn't urgent. So I have a piece of new business, but I don't want to dominate. Does anyone else have any new business that they'd like to bring before us?
I might.
Please.
I'm not sure if it's fully the purvey of the youth committee or it's more fitting in public safety, but my dad brought it up to me. He's like, you're on the community board. You've got to do something about all of the drugstores popping up in the district.
You mean the marijuana places?
Yeah,
Not
all of
like that.
unlicensed
Not
places
CVS.
selling to minors popping up all over.
So I can tell you from my time, my membership with economic development, it is something that they've been discussing as well. And I believe that Nick, who is the chair of that, is in constant communication with, why did his name it was on the tip of my tongue.
Ed Green.
Ed, thank you. With Ed, but I can, I'm not sure it's 100% our purview, but I can reach out to Ed and Nick and see what they're doing. And if the committee agrees, kind of lend our support to any action they're trying to take, as it does affect youth, especially if they are unlicensed. It may imply that they are not following any guides.
They're definitely selling to minors.
I think that's a great issue to raise. I'm on the public safety committee and I'm actually gonna raise it as well. I mean, it's a citywide issue that they had that, the one that opened across from City Hall. And, in view of the mayor's City Hall office, and they shut it down 3 times, and I think it's reopened at least 3 times. And I think it's something that's being grappled with, but we do have to keep it on the front burner from all committees. So that's.
Yeah, I think youth definitely has a place in it, because it's like the kids that are buying it, they're the ones ruining their academic careers, their futures, their health.
Yeah.
And like, I guess the adults would do it even if it was legal, but it would be a lot harder for the kids.
True.
Please forgive my ignorance, but maybe you folks can enlighten me. I mean, I know that there are a lot of vape shops and whatnot that have opened up, but how does one operate an unlicensed facility? I mean, it's like trying to sell cigarettes. Isn't it like trying to sell cigarettes or beer without having a license and pretty quickly get shut down?
My understanding, and I don't pretend to be an expert, is that the crux of the issue is you have to be caught selling it. It's not like, unlike nicotine or alcohol, or maybe more like nicotine than alcohol, is that if it is not on display, the police can't just say, you're selling marijuana here illegally, we're going to shut you down. A lot of these places have the paraphernalia, but they don't have the oils or the gummies or the raw marijuana on display for NYPD to even do anything about it. They have to actually be seen, caught in the act of selling it. Additionally, if they are, the fines are nominal compared to the amount of money they're making. So it's been factored into a cost of business type of thing. The concern being that because they are unlicensed, they then don't have access to the regulated dispensaries. So what they are selling is also unregulated, which may be including a bunch of substances that would not be allowed in a licensed shop. They may have additives to it that are as harmful, if not more harmful than nicotine and such. But people, it's also, people just you don't know what they're selling, if it even would qualify as marijuana to anyone else. It's just all kind of back roomy.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
I-
Now,
I
now
think
I
it's
much better
also-
understand.
Yeah, but I think it's also, David, the fact that law enforcement, you know, has, because of the trend in legislation, gotten out of the marijuana enforcement business as a whole. So like the city has the sheriff's department doing it. It's still, you know, what's happening is still illegal, but they have the sheriff's department doing it because we're still, you know, going from, you know, in the last 4 years, the trend, oh, the police shouldn't be enforcing everything. So instead you have somebody, you know, with the sheriff's patch enforcing it, but there's so few of them that it's practically not enforcing it. And as Dr. Gomez said, when you do get the enforcement, it's not jail, it's a ticket, a civil ticket. So even if you don't pay the ticket, you don't go to jail. You get, you know, you may get bad credit, you may get a money judgment against you, but that's the extent of it.
That's interesting. It's sort of like what they're saying about the tractor trailers on Webster Avenue, Jerome Avenue. Getting a ticket there is the cost of doing business.
Right, overnight
Wow.
parking.
Wow.
It's cheaper than truck parking, than
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
a truck, one of those truck yards, yeah.
Yeah, I see. Okay, thank you.
That's an excellent question. So I think, Sergio, you're gonna follow up with public safety. I'll follow up with economic development to see how the youth committee can fit into the work they're already doing to address this, and how lending our support either with them or on our own, if, you know, if we have to make our own space, I have no problem doing that. But if they're already working, I think lending our support to the work they're already doing would be best if possible. So if I forget, Leona, please don't let me off the hook, and make sure I follow up in the next meeting, if not sooner.
Sounds good. Thank you.
It's great, it's great that you're getting lobbied from home.
It takes a village. Any other new business from the public or community members, committee members, community board members? So the one piece of new business I have is kind of more as an FYI. There has been no official movement yet. However, some of you may have heard Lisa Daub is the current chair of the Aging Committee, and she approached me, and actually Mr. Villaverde in his capacity as chair of the Veterans Committee, regarding a proposal to merge the three committees. There are pros and cons to this. And I'm sorry, I'm just gonna stare my. There are pros and cons to this. This is very much in the discussion kind of feelers phase. I do think, you know, I want to just kind of lay the rough outline out there for the committee today. And I would like us to pick it up next month when people have had some time to think on it and talk to others, either community board members or, you know, the community in general. The idea is that veterans, youth, and aging are the three committees that deal more with people than institutions. They are also committees that, for veterans, it's not currently a standing committee, so they have to be renewed every year. And I believe I know for youth, but also for aging, committee retention has been difficult with traditionally low participation, sometimes to the point where business cannot be conducted during meetings. not shocking here. There are 3 of us. If one of us is out, we can still conduct meetings, but that's just barely. If 2 of us are out, nothing can be done. Where larger committees don't have that issue. Sometimes you get too big and you need too large a quorum, but that's another issue. I think there's something there that resonates with me. However, you know, I think in full disclosure, there have been concerns expressed that, like, we don't want any of those committees or populations to not get their time. You know, we don't want youth to be lost in this hybrid committee. Aging, I imagine, does not want the aging population to be lost in that committee, and veterans we wouldn't want to just be, you know, because we're all merging, that we're jockeying for time and attention if we were to merge in that larger committee. The other thing is, this is not something that is or could happen overnight. Even if we wanted to, this would be a rules change. It would have to go through law, rules, and ethics. Anything like that requires 2 votes, which means even if it would be a 3-month process if we were ready to move forward today, and we are not. For those of you, it's March. Our last meeting for the year is usually in June. We do have the ability to call a summer meeting, but I'm not sure that this would rise to the level of an emergency that people would be willing to participate in a summer meeting. So this will not happen probably until next year. Sorry, the other pro that Lisa brought up, and I want to acknowledge, is that a lot of the centers, community centers, senior centers, do not exclusively serve one population. They are serving the community. So they serve the entire continuum of life, from the little guys, from newborns, oftentimes through as old as you can get to the center and beyond. And they serve veterans and non-veterans and mothers and non-mothers and etc. So would we then, through this merger, hopefully be able to provide more support to those centers? That's the theory. Again, I think there's some sound logic there. From where I'm sitting, and I've had more time to think about this than most, I think it could be really good. I think it would depend on, you know, as always, it's when the rubber meets the road. Who's leading it? What are their priorities? Are they as committed to this vision of being the committee about the people and how individuals are being served? That's where I'm sitting right now. I want to create some time for questions around this, but again, I'm not planning on putting this up for a vote. I'm not asking anyone to say whether or not they support it tonight. It's a lot to digest. But I did want to start the conversation so that we're ready to fully participate when that time comes, or I'm able to fully express where the committee stands when and if that time comes.
Thank you. That.
I'm going to give folks a minute to digest. Don't mind me. I'm going to try to write something in the minutes that sounds like what I just said while you guys think. So whenever anyone has a thought, please feel free to just shout it out.
I've been taking the minutes for you, Dr.
Oh,
Goodman.
have you?
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
You thought I was just not paying attention as usual and doing something else?
I assume that you have lots of demands on your time and they were conflicting at this moment. Yes.
No, that's why I stopped typing when you stopped talking.
Does anyone have any thoughts, even if they're only partially formed, that they want to discuss right now, or should we just put a pin in this until next month when we can devote more time to this more completely?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's new. We have to think about it. I was originally very much in favor of the idea, but then upon further reflection, I was like, maybe not, because, but I think you expressed the main pros and cons of it. And that's why, it's not, it's the process of looking at our committees is always great. And we should, it's worthwhile. But this is not a no-brainer. This is not one of those things you say, of course you have to vote yes. Or, how dare you vote no, or whatever, it's not, there's really on both sides. And I think that's where the thought process comes in. And thank you for that.
Yeah, I think I heard about this at the full board. I can't say I love the plan in its current form. I don't love the idea of youth merging with veterans and aging. I think there's definitely merit to some sort of merger or restructuring, but I personally just really don't like that specific idea.
Are you at a point where you can say a little bit more about what, is it the groups seem too diverse? Is it, or are you not prepared? You don't have to
Yeah,
say.
I think the main thing is, yes, we both work with community centers and people, but we work with very different people. And we have different goals and different issues. And like, for example, this underage smoking thing, that's definitely not an issue for aging or veterans. So I think that it's just disparate issues. And I think Lisa mentioned in her presentation on the full board that a lot of committees, a lot of boards will merge youth with education or with education and libraries, which is a reasonable merger because youth obviously are users of education and also frequenters of libraries. And I think that a merger like that is a lot more logical because there's a lot more parallel issues than there would be with youth and aging or veterans.
So I would just, I think that's a valid point. The only thing I would the only concern I would say with merging this with like because it's now in our community board, I don't know that everyone else does. Merging youth and education makes a little bit more sense. A little bit, not ancient history, but education used to be its own committee. They were having similar issues. So we merged education. Libraries used to be its own, libraries and cultural affairs, I think, used to be their own committee. So those two merged. I would have pause about merging youth with libraries, education, cultural affairs, in that the community centers might not get the same attention, as I think a lot of, especially even in, I'm not a member of that committee, so I couldn't say. I think it's understandable that people would be more concerned about what's happening in schools, and that would get a lot of the time, leaving kind of libraries, cultural affairs, and education to fight over the remainder, which I wouldn't want the many community centers here to not feel like they had a home anymore. So while I think youth and education makes a little bit more sense, since that's already a merged committee, I would have some concerns about between the number of libraries, the number of schools, and now adding the number of community centers and youth service agencies under that. I just think that might be too big for one committee to handle.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. If I may?
Yeah.
Julia, that's exactly what I was thinking. My observation of the merger of education, libraries, and cultural affairs a couple of years ago. I saw that occur, and that is a concern I would have about youth, aging, and veterans affairs. So I think you put it quite succinctly. And I wasn't going to say anything, but since you mentioned, I wanted to concur with my own observation of the same.
Thank you. Like I said, I think for me, I think both pros and cons are very valid and make a lot of sense both ways. For me, I think we might need to flesh it out a little bit more. And I don't know how we would feel about proposing some things about, like, every agenda has to have a space for youth. There has to be like youth issues on that agenda for us to support it. And as I would hope that aging, whoever takes the lead would say, chair's report, is there any youth business? Is there any veterans or is there any aging business? I did that reverse alphabetical, but whatever it is, like having those spaces required, or as much as we can require anything in the agenda would maybe make me feel a little bit better, but also like maybe getting some data together for us about how many centers do we have that do currently serve youth that also have dedicated aging programs? Because I think while that is intuitive to me, I can't tell you 80% of our centers are serving both anyway, or maybe it's 15. And then maybe this makes a little less sense because maybe I run into the same issue I have with merging youth with libraries, education, and cultural affairs. So again, I think I'm sorry, was someone else going to speak?
Please finish your thought, please.
Oh, no, I was going to kind of wrap up. So if there's something on this, please.
I was just kind of logistically wondering, you were talking about how, because Veterans Affairs is a committee that has to be renewed every year, is veterans having the same retention problem that youth and aging are?
I will yield to the chair of the Veterans Committee. Mr. Villaverde, would you like to field that one?
I would answer yes, to be direct.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes me feel almost better about the idea, because if we have like one committee that was going strong and two that were having issues with retention, it would feel like we would have the main committee versus the two that other people joined, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually have the number of people who are on the aging committee, community board members who are voting members and can, but I've made this comment multiple times. My first couple meetings, it was just me sitting in a community center by myself. Now, while I've been able to gather a committee of about 3 the last few years, I will say that there has been very little continuity between the years in terms of those members. And so that is that's a different problem that is unique to us. But again, I think, I really encourage everyone to think about this, even if you don't think about it again until the notice goes out for the next youth meeting. But also think about, for me, I think we need more information. I have some ideas about what information would make me feel better. I'm a quantitative person. I like numbers, but that would make me feel better. What is the information that you guys would need to make it not to support it or to vote against it, but to make your decision, to be able to speak more confidently on this issue? And then I will do everything I can to get it for you.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this proposed merger? Okay, any old business? I have one item that I think I might move up and make an agenda item for next month. Is I have noticed that the community participation has declined in the last few months. So we had been talking about doing the networking event again. I'm not sure that makes sense if we can't get a realistic pulse on how we can best serve the community centers. The way we've traditionally got that is through these meetings. When we've tried to do link invites or Google, what is it called? The Google survey thing where you can put out a survey, they have not been wildly successful. So I, would like folks to think about, if nothing changes, should that still be something we're gonna devote time and energy to? Happy to do so if folks still think it's relevant, but I do want to acknowledge that, we used to have more like 10-ish people on these meetings. And we're about half of that tonight. And I think we were about half last month as well. Any other old business? Okay. Is there a motion to end the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time. Congratulations, Leona.
Congratulations, go Tigers.
Yeah.
And I will see you all next time.
Dr. Gomez, I
Yes,
apologize. Is there any way I could be added to the mailing list for the meetings? My boss gets the notifications for the meetings, and she's getting very tired of forwarding them to me.
sure, if you do me a favor,
Of course.
can you, because we don't have a chat thing, can you send the board, give the board office's email?
The board office's email, bx08@cb.nyc.gov.
Yeah, shoot them an email. They manage the listservs.
Okay.
And ask to be added to the youth list.
Okay.
And then also your boss can email and ask to be removed from that list if it no longer makes sense.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor.
You're very welcome. I will hang around in case there are any other questions, but have a great night.
Good night.
Night.